Welcome back to the channel, everyone. We are here today or this evening for some of my friends around the world to review the Pistons' loss to the Cleveland Cavaliers 101-113 in Detroit's second game of the season. They are now 0-2 to start the 24-25 campaign, and tonight's game, I used missed opportunity to describe the team's opening night loss to the Pacers. Tonight, the word to use to describe the game is frustrating, frustration. It could be turnovers, which I'll get to, but I think tonight was, it kind of brought out, it was a game that brought out all the concerns we have about this team and had them on full display for much of the night. As I mentioned, Detroit they lost by 12 points. They were in this game. The Cavs kind of kept it around 8-12 for most of the game. But Detroit actually got it back to, I think they had it back to 4 points towards the end of the third. But then the Cavs hit a few threes, got an M1, and immediately blew the lead back out to 12 at the end of the third quarter. And from there, I think the Pistons got it back to 8. But it was just a game where it felt like the Pistons were never going to win, but they made some runs and showed signs of a better team than last year. But ultimately, whilst I have very low expectations, and I was happy to see they didn't get blown out by 20, because there was points in that fourth quarter where they could have got blown out by 20, 25 plus. But, it's just frustrating the whole night. Like, I think we have to start with the turnovers. The Pistons had 22 turnovers on the game, 9 of which came from Cade Cunningham. Isaiah Stewart struggled again. I think he had 3 with a couple of offensive fouls. Jalen Duren had a couple. Ivy had a couple. Just like Ron Holland had a couple. It's just, they're absolute momentum killers. And they had some costly turnovers against the Pacers, but tonight, like, you have like 22 turnovers. Like, if you have more than like 16, like 16 feels like a lot, but if you have more than 16, like, you're not winning. Not with the talent deficiency the Pistons are going to find themselves in most nights. And yeah, it was really frustrating, really, really frustrating. And anytime it felt like that run I mentioned where they got it to within 4 points, it was a string of turnovers that just, Ron Holland stepped out of bounds. I think Stu had that offensive foul in there somewhere, and the Cavs immediately hit a pair of threes down the other end, and that lead goes from potentially getting it to 2 points deficit where on Stu's charge, and then you get 2 threes down the other end, and it's back out to like 10 points. So those are the things that kill this team. Those are the things that, if they can't figure out the turnovers, will continue to kill this team, particularly on the road, because you can't. I think it's worth mentioning, and this is a bit of a positive, but the Cavs are really good. Like Evan Mobley, I'm not sure what his final stats were, but he's taken some sort of offensive jump this season. Like, he hit a couple of threes. I know in their first game against the Raptors, like, he's seems to be taking some sort of leap that people have been waiting for. You add in Jarrett Allen, Donovan Mitchell, and Darius Garland, who are all really good. Like, Donovan Mitchell's a star. Allen and Garland are really, really good players, both all-stars. Like, this team's really good. They should beat the Pistons at home. This isn't a game we should expect to win, but I think it's frustrating because of the way the Pistons lost and the turnovers just killed them. So that was the biggest number one thing. Like, you can't turn the ball over like that and expect to actually win and beat good teams. You can't even probably beat, like, even if they played maybe the Trailblazers tonight in Portland, I feel like there's a chance they lose. Maybe that's extreme, but when you're giving the ball up that much, it's really hard to win. So, moving on, not to be too negative, but Tobias Harris, he had a scoreless second half against the Pacers, and then the first half of this game didn't score a point. Need more from him. I think he finished with 7 or 8 points. Was a little bit better in the second half, but I think Tobias needs to be better, and he admitted that in his post-game presser. But I think the Pistons need to maybe find better ways to get him involved. It feels like they are relying on Cade and Ivy for a lot of their offense, which obviously that you want them being your two leading scorers, but it feels like Tobias is getting a bit lost. Once again, that's on him. One of the things people will tell you about Tobias is he can go missing in games, and he certainly has in these first two, which is disappointing. But I think the coaching staff maybe need to try help him get into the game more, especially early. And they did that to start the third, but I think in the first half, especially after the way he ended last game, like get him more involved early because he needs to be scoring at a bare minimum 15 to 16 points, bare minimum for this team to win games on the road. Like, he either needs to be the second or third leading scorer every night if they're going to win games on the road for me and at home. But disappointing night for him, and he's got a big test tomorrow against the Celtics. Hopefully he can step it up because at times defensively he struggled too, which we knew that coming in, but you need more from your lead vet. Cade, uh, I think he had the 9 turnovers, and a lot of people came at me for my post game post on Twitter saying, include the turnovers, like they are costly. And 9 turnovers is bad. It's bad. But I think the reason I'm not giving him a pass, but he did have 33.6 assists on just under 60% shooting. Uh, the reason I am giving him a little bit of a pass is because he had 6 of those 9 turnovers in the first half, which is really bad, but he still scored like 16 in the first half. And then in the third quarter, he had 12 points. And he really got them back into that game. Like they were down double digits to start the half. I think they were down 10 or 12, and he helped them get all the way back to 4 points down on the road. Now, I've mentioned it twice now. The Pistons coughed that up and it went to waste. But I think he got them back to a point where this game was winnable on the road against a good team. And he only had the 3 turnovers in the second half. I think 2 came right at the end of the game when it was over. So you can't have 9 turnovers. But I also think the context is important because he got them all the way back into this game. And it's fair enough if you want to say, well, he needs to win them games. He's in year 4. I actually kind of agree with you, but I think he had a really good game, and to see him come out 28 points, now 33 points, 6, 7, 8 assists in both games, like if the team can win 30 games or 28 games or more, I think he's an all-star. Like, I really do. I think people are going to take notice of him, but if they're not winning games, ultimately he sits in that category of good stats, bad team. And while I disagree with that, that's what the numbers say. So solid game from Cade. Moving on, Jaden Ivey was the other good performer for me. He had 22 points, 50% shooting, 5 rebounds, I think a few assists, only a couple of turnovers, so he wasn't as bad in that regard as Cade. But the foul trouble, man. Foul trouble is killing. Like, Ivy, both games, foul trouble was taking him out of it. And he has looked like he's played 8 quarters of basketball. I reckon in 6 of those, he's looked really good. He's looked like that Ivy we saw in preseason. Like tonight, he hit 2 threes, shot 40% from 3. Looked really good on his drives. His handles improved dramatically. I think the shot looks much better, and it's going in more in the preseason and season so far. But the handle, the way he can get to the rim now, it's taken his game to a new level. But if he's going to keep getting these bad fouls and taking himself out of the game, not only is it's disrupting his flow and disrupting Cade's flow, but it's really hurting this team because they have no backup point guard. And as soon as you're asking Cade now to take all that load and he has to come out at points, so now if Cade and Ivy, they have to be on the floor at all times and they can't have foul trouble. So to see Ivy get foul trouble in both games is really disappointing. And I would hope he doesn't face that issue tomorrow against the Celtics because they're going to need every single minute of him and Cade at their best to have any chance. So, trying to think if there's anything else. I spoke about a lot of this on my live stream post-game with some of the fellas. So you can go check that out. But just a really frustrating game. Really frustrating. I think they had chances to win this. But, yeah. The last thing I think is probably just a disappointing play from Stu and Duran. Stu now, I'm a big Stu fan, but he's had 2 really poor games so far. He's done it when he's on the court. His defense has been okay, but offensively, think he scored 2 points in the first 5 games, no threes, offensive fouls, fumbling passes, and then yeah, getting in foul trouble tonight and just not even being able to have an impact. So really poor start for Stu, and that hurts me to say because I'm a Stu fan, but I got to call it like I say it. And then Duran, I just feel like in a game tonight going against Mobley and Allen, he wasn't good enough on the glass, and he certainly wasn't protecting the rim or making his presence known in the interior on either end. So Allen and Mobley are really good at defending the pick and roll, and they took that away from him and Cade. I don't think I saw one lob, one pick and roll score between the two for JD, but you need more from your 6'10" center, like you just do. I think he had 7 rebounds. It's not good enough. So the bigs, I think that the whole team, the turnovers, everyone played a part in this loss, but Stu and Duran, you need much more from them on a nightly basis. So Paul Reed played some minutes, but hard to have a real grade on him when, it's his first game with the Pistons in the regular season. So I think that's really it, guys. Frustrating game. A game, to be honest, I didn't think they would win. I was hopeful, but if we're being honest, beat the Cavs, I think are going to be a top 4 seed in the East. I think that's a lock. So it's not like we should be surprised, but it's very frustrating. Frustrating game to watch. And look, we now move on and play the Celtics. And look, I have zero expectations. You just have to hope the Pistons come out and play free because they probably don't have. There's no pressure on them to win tomorrow. So you just have to hope they come out, play with energy. Hopefully LCA has the same energy it had opening night and they can maybe shock the Celtics. So fingers crossed for a win because I really don't want to be back here tomorrow talking about an 0-3 team, even though it's very, very possible. But that's going to do it for today's recap, guys. I will be back immediately after the Celtics game tomorrow with Fan Reacts, and then we'll follow it with a game review. So tune in, like, subscribe. Appreciate all your support as always. And yeah, go Pistons.